Yeah, and we see so in children with ASD, some of the newer studies that have come out have looked at neurotransmitter biosynthesis pathways, and they're dysfunctional in children with ASD in the gut. And so what they see is after FMT, these pathways seem to be more functioning because we see changes in the serum levels of neurotransmitters. Mm. So I think that's important to understand, is that the gut communicates really directly with the brain. It has huge impacts in the brain, ranging from kind of inflammatory responses to, basic building blocks of how the brain communicates when we're thinking of neuromodulators and neurotransmitters. Mm-hmm. And when they're dysfunctional in the gut, we're seeing dysfunction in the brain. But when you give those, those building blocks, those abilities back to the gut, you see those systems come back online. And I think that's huge, because I think that's the thing we need to really understand when we're thinking about the gut and its widespread effects, because it's, even as someone who understands it, it almost still seems unbelievable. Yeah. That how are things like depression and anxiety, but as well as things like, ASD, how are they tied to the gut? How does that even make sense? But when you build it down to the gut and the brain communicate back and forth, it's a bidirectional pathway, but it's in important things. The mind-blowing thing, I don't know how many times I've said that, but I've read was 90% of the serotonin is created in your gut. So of all of the serotonin created in your body, 90% of it is coming from the gut. Mm. But we know serotonin plays a huge role across the brain, not just in mood, but one of the ones that we think about when you hear the word serotonin, you think of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and you think of that as an antidepressant. Well, we know that that's important, but that so much is coming from the gut. It starts to make sense that okay, so that's why these, what we consider brain diseases, could also be gut diseases. Yeah. And I think that's the appreciation, so that I think as this research moves forward, that basic understanding has to be there so you can appreciate why these changes are happening. Right. Because it does somewhat feel unbelievable. Yeah. That changing GI symptoms in children with ASD changes, how or reduces these autistic behaviors and allows them to kind of, slowly start to match these neurotypical peers, but also just live a better life, have a better quality of life. And that's at the heart of what we're doing. It's how do we improve quality of life, both for the children and the families. Mm-hmm. And by improving GI symptoms, we know that that's going to happen. And then all of these secondary effects really do just improve quality of life for these kids. Right. And I think that's really important. And I think we're going to see that across more disorders as FMT kind of builds in popularity, I guess is the word I would use. Yeah. Because that's the change. When you talk to somebody who has really bad Crohn's or really bad IBS, it impacts their quality of life to a large amount. Yeah. Where they'll go, how long they'll go there, what foods they'll eat, are all impacted. Things that I think people take for granted. Sure. And I think by being able to improve those things and improve their ability to live their lives, you see other improvements because of that. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the other important thing to think about, is quality of life is really important as well. And I think this is one of those treatments that are I think will really improve quality of life.